Hey everyone, my name's Dom, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm coming at you with the no disclaimers book tag, so get your pitchforks sharpened and join me after the jump. So yeah, this is the no disclaimers book tag. It's been doing the rounds a little bit and it's finally caught up with me. I was tagged by the lovely Katie. I'll link her channel and her video down in the description below, so if you haven't checked them out, go ahead and do so. It's well worth a visit. This tag though I think is really designed to give a couple of unpopular opinions or to get opinions on some potentially sensitive subjects. So I'm just going to dive straight in, but I'll link the questions in the description box below as well, so you've got nice little chapters and you can skip to individual questions. And for one of the questions I am also going to include a couple of spoilers, so I'll put those in the timestamps below as well so you can make sure you miss them, and I'll give verbal warning when they're coming up as well. So let's just get into the questions and see what we're dealing with today. Question 1 is, which trope annoys me the most? So for me this one has to be the wizard in school. I've not had too many recent examples because I guess by the very nature of it, with younger protagonists and so forth, the wizard in school tends to be more geared towards YA, which I don't typically read. There are a few that I've come across though, and two examples which I've read this year which have really irked me with the use of the school scenario, and these are both kind of combination wizarding and military schools, I guess. But you've got the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks and the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Both of these really highlighted what I don't like about this trope. They went into far too much detail and they're really looking at all of the ins and outs of the magic or military, whichever they're dealing with in a particular chapter. But specifically for the magic, they go far too much into depth and all of the inner workings, which is great for showing you that the author's got a well thought out magic system. But for me, it doesn't really hold my interest, and it went too far in depth in both of these examples and was a real contributing factor to me not enjoying the books that I read. Question 2 is, which author do I think is overrated or overhyped? Pat Rothfuss. Has to be for me, Patrick Rothfuss. Whenever I see these top lists of the best fantasy novels or series, I pretty much always go and check them out. One that I often see not only towards the top, but a number of times I've seen right at the number one spot for the best fantasy novel or the best fantasy series, it's The Name of a Wind or The Kingkiller Chronicles. And I don't get it. I really don't get it. Similarly with Patrick Rothfuss, people are saying that is the best fantasy author. And again, I don't get it. I see that and I just think, get over yourselves. He's written 2 books. If you ignore the novella, and I would like to ignore the novella because I really disliked it, but if you ignore The Slow Regard of Silent Things, he's written 2 books and then there's a 10-year wait and counting for his 3rd book. And it's still been in many cases rated as the best fantasy writer, or for the series being the best fantasy series. And we're talking about comparisons here as well, with people who've been around for a long time, who are well loved and who've got plenty of finished fantasy series or books out there, as opposed to just someone who's written 2 books. Now, for me, I enjoyed both A Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear, one more than the other. And I can see that they would be classed as good books, but even having read both of them, I cannot see how these books can be listed amongst the best fantasy series. For me, there are a lot of authors and a lot of series that are at least on a par, if not better, than Patrick Rothfuss and the Kingkiller Chronicles. For me, I just cannot fathom the number of times I see Kingkiller right at the top as the best fantasy series. I cannot understand it. So yeah, for me it's a perfect example of an author who is not only overhyped, but also definitely overrated. Question 3, what are my least favourite books I've read since joining BookTube? Now, this one, in a sense, is quite easy for me actually, because although it feels like a much longer time, I've only actually been on BookTube at this point for a couple of months, so there's not a vast back catalogue of books for me to choose from. The one I am going to pick is Seven Deaths of an Empire by G.R. Matthews. I won't go into too much detail because I'll link the video review I did for this book in the cards up there, but this one, I think for me, it really just hit too many of my personal dislikes and not enough of my likes. It was very much based in a world heavily borrowed from our own, and that is one of the big kind of no-nos for me when I'm reading a fantasy story. Many fantasy series borrow from our world, and that is fine. You're always going to have a bit of that. But for Seven Deaths of an Empire, it was just the scope, the total amount that was borrowed, which really turned me off this book. It's one of, I think, 3 books that I've rated 3 stars since I started my BookTube channel, but it's the one out of those 3 that really stood out the most as being disliked. Question 4 is, what is a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book? And for me, I'm copping out on this one a bit because I genuinely feel like there are no books that I can think of that have been spoiled by a bad ending. My reading history, I think all of the books that I can think of that had a bad ending were already bad books for me, and there's no what I would call quality books that I can think of that have had a bad ending that's kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So no answer for this one. I genuinely cannot think of a suitable answer for the question. Question 5 is, which fictional character do I wish wasn't killed off? So if you haven't guessed it, this is where the spoilers come in. So I'm going to give a spoiler in my answer for The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne, and also for The Greatcoats by Sebastian de Castell. So I'll put them individually in the timestamps below, so you can skip one but not the other if you wish to. Giving you advance warning, Faithful and the Fallen first, so spoilers ahead. So first one that I wish wasn't killed is from The Faithful and the Fallen, and that is Castell. Castell was a character that in the early books in The Faithful and the Fallen, I really got along with him. He was one of my favourite characters. So a very easy answer in terms of why I wish that this character wasn't killed, because I wanted to see more of him, and I really enjoyed the dynamic that he had with Macwin, who is another of my favourite characters in the series. So Castell from The Faithful and Fallen, I wish he didn't get killed off. Obviously, everyone who gets killed off, for the most part, you can see a reasoning for it and it suits the story and whatever, but this is one that I wish hadn't happened, or at least hadn't happened so soon into the series. Second one, spoiler ahead now, for The Greatcoats by Sebastian de Castell, and this one is Aileen. Not the first one, but the second one. The princess, queen, whatever you want to call her, queen in waiting, Aileen. This one, I think, more than anything, was for the impact that her death had, especially on Falkio, our main character, but also because I really wasn't expecting it. A lot of the deaths that you have, especially the ones that you wish didn't happen, you don't expect. You know, they're not really telegraphed. You know, you don't have like certain characters who are going to an execution, so you know that there's a good chance they're going to die. This one with Aileen was completely out of the blue for me. She was one of those characters who I just thought, no matter what happened, she's one of the ones who's going to come through this and be there at the end. And then all of a sudden she wasn't, and it was just a bit of a shock for me. And I thought it was unusual. It's an unusual step to have taken. It worked for the story, but I still wish that she hadn't been killed off. Question 6. What are some of my bookish pet peeves? I have quite a few of those. First of all, for me, I take care of my books. I take as good care as possible of my books. So these answers are kind of related to other people, what they do with their books, and quite frankly, you can do whatever you want with your books. However, I may still cringe now and then when I see or hear you doing it. That's fine. So one of these is reading a paperback with the entire page folded over. Typically, I guess, so you can read the paperback in one hand, which I can do without breaking the spine, so I don't see why you need to fold the whole page over. So just in case there's any confusion over folding pages over, which is a different pet peeve, I'll put a picture just here of exactly what I mean by this, and chances are some of you do this, and that's fine, just don't let me see it, please. Going on from that though is folding page corners over as bookmarks, dropping books, or at least throwing books. Dropping is accidental and that's fine, but people who just don't take good care of books in general, I think. So throwing books around really makes me cringe. Outside of things that you do with books themselves, recommendations. There are some things that people do that really do irk me. One of those is recommending things outside of someone's personal taste profile. So a good example of this, I have read a book and really not liked it, and I've been speaking to people and saying I did not like this book, I'm not carrying on with the series, and then people who've read the series really quite forcefully pressuring me, saying you should definitely read the next book and the next book because it gets really good after book 4 in the series. So I don't care. I don't care if it gets good after book 2 of the series. I didn't like the first book. There is nothing in there that makes me want to carry on reading the series. Just because you say it gets good doesn't mean I will. I know my taste better than you. Don't forget that. But primarily, there is nothing that makes me want to carry on with the series if I really didn't like the first book. I couldn't care less if it gets really good later in the series. I'm happy and comfortable missing out on that. Slightly different to that is when people will knowingly recommend books that are outside of my personal tastes. So, for instance, with this one, I don't like urban fantasy, not interested in it whatsoever. I've said plenty of times as well that I don't like guns in my fantasy, so any books that have those I will generally avoid. There are exceptions, and it's normally when they're such a small part of the story or when they kind of creep up on you and I'm already invested, so that's happened a few times and it's a bit annoying. But when they are a big part of the story, so my specific example is the Dresden Files. Again, I don't care how good this series is, it's not a series that interests me and I'm happy with that. I'm comfortable missing out and never experiencing the Dresden Files. But people who will still, knowing my tastes, still try to push the Dresden Files on me, why do you do that? I know my tastes better than you do, I've said. It really bugs me. So there's loads of pet peeves that I have, but I think for everyone's sanity, I'm going to leave it at that. Question 7 is, what are some books that I feel should have more recognition? This is actually now quite a difficult one for me. In years gone past, there are 2 series which are amongst my favourite series that I would always pick out for this answer. One of those is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne, and over the past few years that has really taken off. I don't know what the catalyst was, but it's really taken off, and there's loads of people who really love this series and talk about it quite a lot. So that's kind of one ticked off the list. The second one, which is probably the one that I'll really give as an answer still to this question, is Shadows of the Apt by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I say that kind of hesitantly because this one is also starting, I think, to take off a little bit and get talked about more in the community. There are a number of Tchaikovsky's books which are picking up traction, like the Children of Time, Children of Ruin. Guns of the Dawn is seeing a lot of people reading them, and Shadows of the Apt is starting to be picked up as well, with a re-release of the covers being available more readily in the United States. Part of this I've mentioned in a few videos on the channel, but part of the reason that this is starting to take off, at least in my little corner of the community, is the Library of Alexandria doing the read along, and of course Alan has read some of those books and shows particular love for Guns of the Dawn. So a very influential member of the community, and a lot of the people who converse with Alan and who follow his channel are picking up these books as well. And that's only going to improve from August, with the channel hosting a read-along of the first 4 books of the Shadows of the Apt series. So fingers crossed, this one is going to do similar to Faithful and the Fallen and is really going to take off in the community soon. Question 8 is, what are my thoughts on censorship and banning books? I think, to borrow an answer that I saw on Discord when someone did this, is it's dumb. I know there are reasons that people censor books, but I don't agree with them. For me, it should be more like a video or a movie kind of system where you have age ratings based on the content to show a recommendation of reading age and what kind of content you can expect in a book. That's absolutely fine. I'm fully on board with people saying, to young children, the themes in this book are a bit too old for you and you should maybe wait for them. However, there's still an element of choice there as to what you do with that information. But as far as the actual censorship side of it goes, I don't think that's right. I don't agree with it whatsoever. The only time that I think that is applicable is if you've got specific instructional books, like I believe the Anarchist Cookbook is, that tells you, for instance, how to make bombs. That I can definitely see as a good thing to censor or more likely ban. Things like Mein Kampf, for instance, I don't understand why that would need to be censored or banned, because it's not telling people how to do anything. It's just the manifesto of someone who was historically a very bad man. There are lots of very bad men in history, and a number of them have written books. And just because it's the manifesto of Adolf Hitler, it doesn't mean that it's going to, I don't know, persuade people to kind of follow on his path or anything along those lines. So for me, using that example is not something that I think needs to be banned or censored. Maybe a little content warning on it to say what to expect going into the book. That's fine, that's completely different, and I think especially in this day and age, completely relevant for many books to have. And then the ninth question, the unofficial one, is to tag a couple of people. So this tag's been around a little bit, but I've picked two channels that I've come across recently and subscribed to, both of which I think could do with a bit more love, a few more subscribers, because I think they're punching above their subscriber number. So I'll link both of these tag channels in the description box below. Go and check them out, give a watch to a few of their videos, give them a subscribe if it's content that you enjoy. So the first of those is Mari from Book Reading Coffee Drinking. Mari is a Scottish booktuber. She's got slightly different tastes to me, but I do enjoy the content that she puts out. Go and check out her channel. And the second one is it's actually a 2-for-1, and it is Tony and Kate from An Erudite Adventure. This one is it's a nice little dynamics. It's brother and sister from Alaska, and it's two people in one channel, so you're going to get a different taste profile from the two of them. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what sort of answers these two channels come up with. But that's it from me today. Let me know in the comments box below if you've got some different answers, or if you've got thoughts on my particular answers to these questions. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. I'm going to catch you in another video, but until then, take care of yourself and read some good books. See you later.